Hi guys, today we're doing a little project and I think it's going to be a project of two halves, and the first half we're going to be using the Cricut Gypsy, so we're going to be doing some designing on that. So as you can see, I've got the Cricut lined up here and I'm hoping that you can see that nice and clearly on the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is open a new page, and I've got a 12 by 12 mat, but as you can see you've got the 12 by 6 mat, the 12 by 12 or the 12 by 24, so it doesn't matter which machine you've got, just pick which mat suits your machine. So I'm going for the 12 by 12, and there you can see the whole mat on the screen and all the buttons at the side. You've got your basic menu up here and then your advanced tab here. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be trying to do like a Z-fronted card, but with a cutout on it that sort of cuts out across the Z front, and then put a layer on top of that of a Christmas tree. So first thing we need to do is, just for ease really, because I want the finished card when folded to be 7 by 5, I'm going to create on my first mat a box that is 7 inches down by 5 inches across. Now there's lots of squares in all sorts of different cartridges, so just pick whichever cartridge you've got that has a square. I'm going to, the way we click to get the different cartridges, and I'll just zoom in, is we click on this little button here, which is sort of like a little pad, and then this brings up all the cartridges. Now as it happens, I'm in the cartridge that I want, which is George and Basic Shapes. Now to get the actual shapes in George, you need to hit the Shift key and get all these different shapes. So I am going to pick my square, and if I just move slightly, you can see it comes in that top bar on the selection panel there of your Gypsy. When you've selected all the images that you want and those images are all up on that bar, then you click back on that little icon down the bottom here, and that takes you back to your mat, and you will see just in the centre there a little tiny square. Now that size that the square or whatever image it is that you get on your mat when you first put the image onto the mat is determined by the size that you have already set your little cursor at, this cursor here, prior to collecting your image. I think it is by default set at 1 inch, so unless you remember to change it beforehand, it will automatically come as a 1 inch icon. However, that doesn't really matter, you can then click on that icon. Now because in this instance I want very specific images, I'm going to not want to move this up proportionately, which is what this little yellow toggle does here. So if it's marked yellow and then you make it bigger, the size of it will, the image, whatever image it is, will grow proportionately across ways to height ways. But since with the square I want this to be a specific width and a specific height, I am going to click on that toggle to make that go to white, which means I can determine the width individually and the height individually. So the first thing we do is going to click on the width. I'm then going to click on my little sort of calculator, and then we get, let me just zoom you out a little bit, into this section here where it gives you a little calculator, and you can put on here, I've got it set to inches, you can set this all to millimetres if you prefer, and I'll show you how to do that in a second when we come out of this, but at the moment it's set to inches. Now I want the front width of my card to be 5 inches, so I'm going to click on the 5 inches, and that comes up in that top bar there and it says 5, so you know you've clicked on the correct number. And then we're going to click on OK. So then when we get back here, you can see, just zoom you in, that the box now is 5 inches across, although it is still only 1 inch high. So then I'm going to go across to my height button where it says 1 inch. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on my little calculator, and I'm going to click the 7 because that's the height that I want. And again, that's come in that little bar just at the top there, so I know I've clicked the right button. And then I'm going to press OK. So now I have a box in the centre of my mat which is 5 by 7. And I'm just going to central that sort of just approximately in the middle of the mat, and I'm going to use that as a template for the next layers. And the way that we do that, sorry, just before I go on to that, I did promise that I would show you how to change this into millimetres now, so let me just zoom in quickly and just do that for you. Oops. Okay, so if you see at the top here it says inches or millimetres, so if you want to work in millimetres then you can just click onto the millimetres button here and it will turn yellow. I personally always like to work in inches because that is how the actual real mat, as opposed to the virtual mat on the Gypsy, is numbered and sized, so it means it just makes it easier when you correspond this virtual mat with your real mat. It makes it a little bit easier to work. Okay, so now going back to this image here, what we now need to do in order to use this as a template, since the updates, I think actually even prior to the updates, you can now get additional pages. So in order to get an additional page, I don't know if you just saw, I just pressed, there's a little cross just in the corner here. If you press on that, you'll see now we've got layer 1 and layer 2. And if you look just on there, there's a little eye. Now if you click, when you're working, and on this occasion we don't want to do this, but when you're working, if you're working on several layers and you don't want to see all these layers showing through, you just want to see the layer you're working on, the mat that you're actually working on, then you can click the eye and it closes and that hides that layer. Okay, now if you notice the layer is in purple and then we've got a layer in blue. The one that's in blue is the mat that the layer that you are actually working on. So let me just zoom you out. What you can see now is that just in the layer behind, not on the mat that we're working on, it's not on this mat, but you can see my 7 by 5 square. So this is just going to be used as a guide for the next stage, so that when I'm doing the next things that I'm doing and my actual designing, that this is going to be the size that I know the front of my card needs to be when it's finally folded. Okay, so it's just a helpful guide. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is start designing the card. And what I've just realised is that in order actually to help that work, I need to go back to my layer 1, press that, and I need to move that across into that section, line it up with that middle line, and then I need to go across to my advanced tab, click on that, and then you'll see this little button here where there's 2 sort of squares together. That's your copy. If you press that when an image is highlighted, you get a second one the same, and then I'm going to move that across and I'm going to line it up with the first one, and I'm just going to nudge that into position, and you can just check that it's at the same height because you've got, sorry guys, I've gone the wrong way, you've got your Y figure here, and if you look at the Y number here, there it says 2.47 for the box that I've highlighted now. And then if I go onto this box, whoops, which I've now completely moved, so what I'll do before I carry on is I press undo, and that takes it back to where it was before. So just highlight it, and then I look at my Y figure there, and it's at 2.56. So it's close, but not quite the same. So we need to just press that key there. That's just one up. This arrow here goes up in tens, and this arrow goes up in single numbers. In whatever you're doing, whether it's measurements or these or anything that you're doing, that's what those arrows. So now we know that those two boxes are completely level across the top. So now I can go back into my layer 2. Okay, so now we've set up our template behind. So the next thing we need to do is sort out another layer that's going to be a template. So the plan with this card is we've got this card, this will be our central folded line, and then we're going to have another folded line down here, but that folded line is going to be in the shape like so of the Christmas tree in this case, but it could be a bear, it could be anything. But what we need to do is sort of cut that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the Christmas tree that I want, and I'm going to put that on top here as a layer, as a template. I'm going to put it in the position that I want it. Then I'm going to create another layer and use that as a template to make my cuts on my card, which I will then make a box in this size, so that complete card cut out with the cutouts of the Christmas tree. I will then also cut separate layers of the tree to make layering up, and then we can decorate it, and so that will make like a little Z-fold card. Okay, so I've already decided that the Christmas tree I wanted is in Create a Critter, and that's, as you can see, is in the little corner there, so press that. That is on the accessories key of the Create a Critter cartridge, and there it is up in the view panel there. So then we go back to our mat. You can see it's a tiny weeny little tree. In order to make that bigger, I'm going to use my toggle. So on your toggle you have got a little big bubble and a little bubble. The big bubble obviously makes things go bigger, and the little bubble makes things go smaller. So that's just another way of making things change size. This is something that I use when I'm not quite sure what size I want it to be, so you can just use that to literally look at it as you're making it bigger or smaller and getting it to where you want it to be. So I'm just going to move over to the tree so you can see it, and while you're looking at that, you'll know I'm pressing that button. Okay, so now I'm just going to get my tree and I'm going to move it down a little bit. The other thing is we want it central, so we want that centre of the tree to be the centre line of that section of that other part, that other template. So now we're going to open another layer, because that is at the moment just going to be used as a template. So we're going to go back up to our little button up here, and we're going to press our plus like so, and we've got layer 3. So we're now on layer 3. So we've got our tree and we've got our base card. So the next thing we need to do is we need to start making our cut line that's going to be basically all along these edges. We need the Cricut to cut. So we'll have this base card. We're not going to cut the centre or anything, but we need a little cut line just where this tree is here. There. We don't need it at this bottom bit here. Probably not even on the trunk, because that could fold. So it's just going to be this bit here, and then another fold line here. Okay,